We got to mix the mission statement with the idea that everything is relevant. Our stand-up is relevant. Living in New York is relevant because it's all how to deal with day-to-day life.
Yeah.
Is that generally it? Yeah. And how the littlest things in the world ruin your whole outlook on life just because of one day when it's really not that big of a deal, but we've got to find a way to deal with our fucking anger, basically.
Yeah.
Welcome, everyone, to The Power of How. The usual suspects are here. Brennan Tassif, Daniel Torado, chilling here at the end of summer 2023.
We made it.
It's a weird scenario where January 2023 seems like a million years ago, but it's still just fucking flew by.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's almost the end of summer. I just got the air conditioning in.
The clip I use for the reels and stuff is from the episode. The clip itself is when Matt is like, man, 2023 is this is in 2022 saying 2023 is going to be our year. Oh, right. And it's so weird because I listen to that clip every time I'm doing the reels because I use the back end of it. And it's like, oh my God, we're almost in September now.
Yeah, we're 4 months away from
And
24.
this gig is fast approaching.
Which one?
The one I've been scared to death of. And now realizing like I've got about 18 minutes of clean material.
Nah, you gotta wait.
For a 40-minute spot.
Is it clean?
It's clean. And what's so funny is I keep trying to get a good answer on what it is.
Yeah.
And they don't really want to tell me. They're like, it's a community show. Well, what the fuck does that mean, community? Everything is a community.
Right. So you reached out to them or?
Yeah, I've talked to them.
Okay.
Yeah. And what I can gather is it's an old folks home of some sort.
Oh, is it?
I think so. It's 55 and up, and the way I'm not going to use her name, but she was like, "Yeah, don't do crowd work because last time somebody had dementia and it got really weird."
This is in the Northeast?
Yeah,
this is in Virginia.
Okay.
Yeah, I can't believe we're going to Virginia.
But it's too late to like.
I forgot that you guys were doing this one. Yeah,
it's too late to cancel because my only relationship with this woman is that I've canceled on her in like 2005.
This you remember,
and she has no idea.
Yeah, of course.
So like it'd be really funny to like cancel again, but I can't. It's too close.
Well, you got to wait another 15 years.
Yeah.
You wanna? No,
I mean, there's things you can do. Like get off way fucking early. Like what do they know?
Well, you don't.
Like what do they know? The show doesn't. This community doesn't know how much time I'm supposed to do. They want to give me a pay cut. I don't give a fuck. At this point, I don't want to fuck them over.
Yeah, no way. And also, it would reflect really poorly on me because
exactly.
Which you don't mind.
No, I wouldn't want to do that.
But I think. I was even thinking of driving back home the same night.
Yeah,
only because they said, "Do you want to stay in the hotel?" And that made me wonder: is it not good enough for us to stay, or
the fact that they're asking?
Yeah.
Well, he said that to me too. He goes, "Yeah, some comics like to drive there and drive back." I go, "Oh, people like to spend 10 hours in the car in one day.
Right.
People like doing that.
Right.
No fucking way, dude.
I didn't think so either, but that made me suspicious about, the premises where we will be staying.
I feel like they're tiptoeing around details.
Yeah.
Well, we'll bring the details back home.
If it's a legit, they'll just be like, yeah, everyone stays in the hotel. Like everyone, of course you're going to stay at the hotel.
And the money's shit, man.
Because they're like, maybe you want to go home. Maybe you want to drive.
Right.
You're like,
maybe you'd rather drive.
Yeah, you're like, okay.
That's exactly
maybe
what
I would rather drive.
Right.
Yeah, I also want the option. Shit. I want the option.
Yeah,
I don't have to tell them if I say fuck this and leave.
Yeah,
right.
I want the option.
Right.
You better rent a hotel room. But now I'm thinking it's in an old folks home.
I just don't want any
a room in the old folks.
Now that we're talking, I'm feeling like it's a room in the old folks. Which I wouldn't mind.
That's like a cruise ship.
Yeah. I wouldn't mind using a bedpan for the evening.
Yo,
I've never had the option before.
let's find out. Let's wait and see. Hopefully, it'll be. I don't know.
Listen, the fact that it's one night and it's you and I can live with it.
Yeah, we'll grab some grub later, and it'll be fine.
It will be fine.
Yeah.
I'm just saying I got a lot of work to do, which I should be working anyway. I've got to tape an hour next year. Like, I've got to get some material together, so it would be good for me.
Yeah.
But, like new, clean material.
No.
It's going to be fine. I know how to do this.
Yeah.
I've bullshitted my way through these things before. You stretch, and you ask somebody with dementia what their favorite color is or whatever.
But you just
don't ask them again.
But what's crazy is on these clean shows, you want to do crowd work.
I know.
You mainly want to.
Yeah.
No, they're just nervous. They're saying things like, don't do this, don't do that. And if you notice, it keeps changing. It's like, it's PG, it's PG-13, it's PG again. Like, which is so absurd.
PG-65.
PG-13 is the funniest thing in the world. They always tell you when it's like an older audience, and it's like, they're so far above the age of 13.
Yeah.
And they've seen so much.
Right.
It's just so weird, this dance we do with bookers, because they don't want to tell us what to do exactly, because everybody's material is a little bit different. They're just trying to give you this vague understanding. And even with movies, these ratings are weird. You got 16 Candles where there's full tits out.
Oh,
in a PG movie or a PG-13, whatever the case.
Well, Hook is PG, and that movie, because I rewatched it again, it's one of my favorites, but there's death and destruction, and literally the Lost Boys at one point say to Robin Williams' character as Peter Pan, they're like, we kill everyone. And you're like, this is PG?
Yeah. And what kids see today, you even look at Disney movies, in every movie there's a tragedy that happens.
Bambi, doesn't mom get killed in Bambi?
A Lion King, father gets killed.
Yeah.
I think
Dumbo, the mom gets killed. The wife dies.
Just really uplifting.
Finding Nemo, the mom dies.
Right.
Fantasia, Mickey takes acid.
But in all of them, it's the setup of the hero's journey. There has to be a tragedy to ensue.
Yeah, but not that tragic when you're 5. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I don't know.
What I mean?
If you watch it with a kid, and I remember, the kids get real sad when they watch it.
Yeah, well,
they get real sad.
Kids get real sad. Not 35-year-old men. Yeah,
the problem.
We don't cry when we.
If you're at home watching Bambi right now, trying not to cry, I don't know what to tell you.
The Pixar movies get me though. Like when a new Toy Story comes out, there's always something tragic that happens.
Yeah,
and it gets me, man.
Right.
But that's what's wrong with cartoons or children's movies is that they're written by adults. Mm-hmm. They should be written by children.
Yeah.
And then there'd be just no plot whatsoever.
And no sense to
and the
story.
characters from the beginning would not be at the end.
Right.
It would just be like a dream, like a total dream.
Which would be awesome.
It would be great.
Would be cool. There is something strange to, I don't know if it's present day or if it's always been like this. You're a big Sopranos guy. You've seen that a bunch. And this is something I've noticed. Suits, this really dumb USA show, came out on Netflix, and I've been watching that. And I was talking to my friend about this, but this is something that's been really upsetting with television lately is you can never just have a couple episodes where there's just the main antagonist and everything else is going fine. There's always like 10 different subplots going on.
Right.
Where it's like, why can't we just focus on what the show is about?
You know what's funny? Like, that is the new era we're in.
Yeah.
So,
because in Sopranos,
50 years
it would be
ago,
like one thing was happening and we're going to deal with this one thing.
Yeah.
But now in shows, it's like 10 things are falling apart. It's
you
like,
need B stories.
Yeah.
C stories.
It's so annoying. Because I'm like, can't we just...
but those B, C, D stories will eventually become the A story.
Yeah, that's what they're doing.
Point.
Yeah.
Because they want to run 10, 12, 15 seasons, which is absurd.
Yeah.
Like, you can tell the really good shows because they'll market. They'll be like, we're only going 4 seasons. Ted Lasso, The Bear, the shows like that, they're like, we're only doing this many seasons. Like, that's it.
How about, like, you know how Ice Cube has a song, Today Was a Good Day?
Yeah.
How about just an episode like that of The Sopranos, where everything just goes great for an hour?
This is why I can't. I don't know if I brought it up on this show, but this
No
is why
conflict.
I can't watch the National Lampoon movies because of my anxiety.
Uh-huh.
Like, it's one of those things where people are like, "Oh, it's so funny, National Lampoon's Christmas." It's like, No, everything's going like this is my nightmare.
All right.
Everything goes wrong.
Yeah.
Like I can't
Yeah.
like those kind of movies I just can't watch because I'm like, no, this is just one shitty thing after another.
Right.
And like whenever I go on a trip or have family over or whatever, that's my biggest fear is like everything's gonna go. It's so silly. I'm like, no, this is a disaster.
That's how I feel about every episode of most TV shows, or every TV show has an episode where it's like somebody dies and they don't call the cops right away.
Yeah.
Or the cops start talking to him and they just start talking back to him without calling a lawyer. I lose my shit constantly.
Yeah.
Breaking Bad was
Like,
big
I'm
on
like,
that.
will you just please call the cops?
Yeah.
Right.
Your sister died. Every second you don't call the
We're gonna
cops.
figure it out. It's like you're gonna do life in prison. Actually, is what's gonna happen.
It's like do you remember? Well, I'm sure you saw it, but Murder She Wrote.
No.
Never watched that one.
Dude.
Never watched that
You know
show.
what's
But it was on the air for like 11 years.
Yeah. So the premise is it's this writer who writes murder mysteries.
So she always solves mysteries in real life.
Oh, okay.
But the thing is, wherever she goes, somebody dies.
Right. It's like
Wherever
Scooby-Doo.
she goes,
Yeah.
somebody's gonna get killed.
God.
Which is really odd. But funny enough, we're talking about television shows, and I just saw this really, really, really good movie yesterday. I called The Jesus Revolution. Have you heard of it?
No.
It's about a historical event in the 70s.
I have heard of it.
Yeah, it's about the Jesus movement. So it was considered, and I think it still is considered, as the biggest spiritual awakening in America.
Okay.
So it's when a lot of teenagers and
Like on the scale of like French Enlightenment and stuff like that.
well, I don't think that ever reached America.
No, but you know what I mean. Like
No,
how
of
it
course,
took over France.
and it did actually. But
We have yet to be enlightened.
right, but it is considered like the yeah, right.
Is there a McDonald's nearby? That's the biggest existential question of all time here.
So there's a big movement of there's a lot of kids with post Vietnam, during Vietnam, the rock and roll revolution. People are falling into drugs, discovering acid, and they were seeking a truth through drugs. So the Jesus movement kind of helped all these young teenagers find a different kind of truth, or explore a different truth through religion, through Christianity, and it really happened. That's what's fascinating.
I remember
about this.
a new version of the Bible coming out.
Oh yeah.
That was for young people. Like it was for hippies.
It was like hippies. It was like
it was retranslated in a way that
and rebranded as like Jesus freaks.
Right.
And
there was Volkswagen buses involved.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
And they would make fun. Well, I think
The new missionary.
I've heard the term
Yeah.
Jesus freaks before.
Yeah, so that comes from the Jesus movement. And so the whole movie's about that. And it was weird because
I just want to stop just for a
go
second.
ahead.
Because freaks was like a real term back then.
Yeah.
So it was like a combination of two different types of people.
Yeah.
Like religious people and freaks. Freaks were like hippies.
Yeah.
and squares.
Yeah.
Freaks and geeks. Yeah.
And squares.
Squares were what?
Like very conservative people.
Right.
So, but that was a thing. Like,
Yeah.
they'd be like, "Hey, square."
Right.
That was like
It was beatniks.
Right.
There was Yippies at one time.
Yuppies.
No, there's Yuppies, but there's also Yippies.
Oh, really? What's a yippie?
I don't know. We'd have to look it up. But it's a thing. Yippie is a thing. I don't want to interrupt you.
No, don't worry. But yeah, it was just it was weird to see a movie, and you don't get that a lot, but it just kind of makes you feel good.
Yeah, I haven't had that in a
okay.
long time.
Yeah.
I didn't know you were going there.
Yeah.
Anytime there's a documentary nowadays, it's like the dark side of Jesus freaks.
Death is coming for
But
everyone.
it was actually it felt like I'm not into like Christian music or Christian movies.
Yeah, no one is.
But that's what's weird about that's what's weird. That's what's weird about the movie is that it is a Christian movie without coming across as a Christian movie.
Yeah.
And in that sense, I thought it was really well done because it was historical, and it did happen. And some cheesy parts, but I love cheese. But it was just really, it was what I thought was really beautiful is that, and I lack this in my life, but a true sense of community.
Yeah. That's the appeal of the cult.
Yeah.
And so this was just another type
church,
of cult, which is more of an established religion.
But it wasn't a cult. A cult, I think, has a negative connotation.
It does, but it's like it's similar to, so as far as I understand, especially in California and on the West Coast in general, there was all these communes popping up.
Right.
Where it was just like, let's drop out of this. And I'm sure you still read about stuff like this too, where you right now we're trying to mentally drop out of the rat race, but still live in the rat race.
Yeah.
Right.
But with these people, they were like, well, we're just going to live. We're going to grow our own food. We're going to do this. We're going to do that.
Well,
and it always ends up with one guy being the leader and banging all the women. And it just goes, and they just get power hungry. That seems how it always seems to go, including like the church. You see priests get power hungry in weird ways.
Yeah.
But
I think it's a natural form, though, where if you get enough people into a group, someone's going to take leadership, and someone because
so you're trying to get away from this global or worldly dynamic, but you can't escape it. There's always going to be more passive people, more aggressive people that are more on the outside of the group, who keep to themselves, don't come out of their room. Like, it's just like you can't escape the human dynamics, I don't think.
Yeah. And I don't know the accuracy of the movement. I'm just basing myself on the movie that I watched, but they do explore the ego of the leader, or the development of the ego of the leader.
Because he's also the one that talks directly to God most often. I talked to God yesterday, and he says,
but what was
we can have pizza tonight.
But,
oh, thank God. And you, Jeff.
Literally.
Thank you for talking to God,
that's what was cool, is that he was not one of those, and again, I don't know if this is historically accurate, but based on the movie, he was not the leader that was banging everyone and starting orgies. When he
does anyone want to join my cult?
But that's what's appealing to a lot of.
I know.
But he kind of checked himself, and he left to work on his marriage. And then he came back to the church, but it was quite fascinating seeing him come from a really good place, and then having his ego be fed and developing into that character, and then being aware of who he's becoming and deciding to leave for himself and his wife. And I thought that was really cool. That's something you don't see.
It is cool. You never see it. It usually just ends up with destruction.
Yeah.
And Kool-Aid.
Yeah.
And mayhem.
But that's what I thought was really cool about the movement, because there was nothing that was seemingly negative.
Yeah.
It helped people leave drugs, and a lot of people found some form of peace, love, and all that stuff, that you die for today.
Yeah. Well, you look at somebody like George Harrison, and it's like they get
Beatles impression.
Yeah, that's pretty good.
That was fantastic.
I was like, dude,
higher pitch Mark Norman.
Put some guitars behind that. You got to hit.
I think that should be the clip. That's gotta be. Forget anything else we said today. Hey,
this is like a Fonzie band to me. The Fonzie.
What song were you referencing?
That's Yellow Submarine, isn't it?
No.
I honestly just know the Beatles from all the parodies of the Beatles.
Right.
We were like, hey,
which is Yellow Submarine.
Oh, okay.
Yellow Submarine isn't the Beatles. Yeah. Do you know that?
Yeah, that is.
Somebody else did the voices for that.
Really?
What do you mean?
The movie, the cartoon.
Oh, the cartoon.
It's not the Beatles.
But the song is the Beatles.
The song is the Beatles.
Yeah.
But the
whole movie is not them.
It's just everyone doing their impression.
Yeah.
Hey.
Yeah.
All right.
Paul never cleans his toothbrushes, so does he? Shit like that, you know?
That's a little bit more recognizable.
But George Harrison, he took all the drugs, the psychedelics, and then he was like, I can't be taking acid every day. I want to find something.
He found an Indian guru.
Right. And that's usually where it goes.
Hey.
But I found an Indian guru, didn't I?
Well, wait, that's Paul McCartney.
I know.
Yeah, that's not.
Nelson.
That's
I'm
not
doing,
Harris
I'm
George
doing my best over here.
Those sound the same.
And they all went to.
They're all the same.
They did look like the same guy.
I think it's interesting, though, talking about watching something where it was actually peaceful because, and we've talked about this before on the show, people are inherently angry. Like, they just want to get mad about stuff.
Uh-huh.
Because it's interesting, like, some of the people we know that have blown up in certain circles and stuff like that, it's just because they're ranting and yelling and screaming about all sorts of shit.
Yeah.
And it's like I know certain people that are true to this, like the idea of Christianity, what it's supposed to represent. I know people who are very true to that.
Yeah.
But because they are conservative or because they are labeled as GOP or right wing, people automatically come out against them. Mm-hmm. They'll be like, fuck that person. And I'll be like, well, why? And they go, well, because just fuck that person. And I'm like, yeah, but that person's helped me a lot and like put their money where their mouth is. And they're just like, yeah, but fuck that person.
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, you just want to be mad.
Right.
Yeah, people want to be mad. And also, we're just seeing the worst of every group represented on the internet
now.
now.
The internet is...
You know, it's just like, check out this Christian doing some non-Christian shit.
Yeah.
You know, and you fall for it.
Well, and the other thing, too, is a lot of the people who have their egos checked aren't the people that are on the internet, like, so abundantly.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, the great leaders are not the people who are like, I need content, I gotta post. Like
they hire someone.
Well, not only that, but they're just great leaders in their. Some of the best trainers and like strength coaches I've had, you've never heard of. And for good reason. Won national championships, like Division I strength coaches. You would never heard of them. You'll never hear of them.
Right.
And then you got this guy who got all these followers because he lost like 70 pounds online. And he's like, I'm the motivational coach. And it's like, you don't know shit, dude.
Yeah.
But because you're like on the internet feeding your ego, you now are this authority figure in this world. And it's like, but you don't.
Yeah, it's not like.
You know what I mean? Like, it's like
it's
the
not
loudest voice is like the leader. And it's like, that's not how it should work.
It's not like Emeril's the best chef.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
In fact,
Well, I mean, listen, if he was here, I would eat what he's cooking.
I know.
And The Rock, too.
Obviously, I know people in that world working in restaurants. Mm-hmm. He's kind of a joke in that community.
Right.
And like the same thing. Like,
he's like a Chef Boyardee or something.
Yeah.
Hey, whoa. Let's not laugh at Chef Boyardee here.
It's good in a pinch, but
No,
you're not paying top dollar for it.
Some of the best chefs in the world people have never heard of. You would never, like, if I told you certain chefs' names, people would be like, I don't know who that is. And it's like, yeah, they're a 3-star Michelin chef, but no one's ever heard of them. Same thing in fitness, same thing in comedy.
Guitar players.
Yeah, it's same.
Like, nobody knows who Joe Satriani is.
Yeah. I don't know
Mad
who that
love,
is.
Joe. Mad love, Joe.
But it's interesting because...
No disrespect, Joe. You're one of the greats.
But then people are like... There's a comic who got real big on social media through crowd work. And I've had people reach out to me and be like, oh, do you know so-and-so? They're so funny. And I'm like, I know I've personally met some of the best comedians in the world. And this guy, just because he's loud and has all these, like, got all these followers, now everyone's like, he's the authority on comedy. It's like, are you out of your fucking mind?
Yeah, no, there's always a flavor of the year.
But I think that it goes with with what we're talking about with the cult leaders, where the best leaders are true leaders, where they check their ego and then they go home to work on their marriage and, hang out with their wife. And then they come back and they go, hey, I'm an even better leader now. The problem is the ones we hear about are the ones drinking Kool-Aid and orgies.
Right.
Yeah.
And there's some of them just need so much attention.
Yeah.
I'm not even thinking of anyone specific now, so I feel like I'm bullshitting a little bit.
Right.
But it's true. I mean,
and there's something also cool, very cool about, I don't know, how we through history have depicted Jesus. There's that hippie vibe about him that is very, even though we change his the color of his skin,
that's quite the fucking maneuver,
right?
By the way, oh yeah, he lived in the Middle East, but he was white.
But
that's how you knew he was the son of God.
But he looks like a hippie. So, and you know what? It's I had a.
Have you ever seen the real picture of Jesus though that they've composited?
Yeah.
Well, the Shroud of Turin, which is not 100%
right.
Sure if. Yeah, but
no, but they did a computer generated like this is someone from this time would look like from this area, and he don't look like the fucking skinny ab. He don't got abs.
No, he looks like a Flintstone. it's funny. I had a conversation with an atheist, one of the guys who works at really, really nice guy, man, Joe. I don't know if I should drop his name or not, but he's really cool guy. He works at Gotham, and he said that he's an atheist, and I've never really met a true atheist. And I don't know if you guys have really ever met an atheist, but a lot of people say they're atheists,
right?
But then when you end up talking to them, they're like, their argument is like, well, you don't know if there's a God. And yeah, but the argument back is you don't know if there's not a God.
It's mostly
it's mostly agnostic,
right?
Right. But I've never really met someone who truly believes.
It's hard to be a true atheist
because the whole premise of atheism is you're arguing and not knowing. But how can you argue and not knowing when no one knows?
Yeah.
Well, if you want to take it to a court of law type thing, I think you would
have to swear on the Bible.
True, but like
they
in
don't
terms
do that anymore.
But in terms of court. Like, wouldn't you have to prove that there is a God?
Beyond a reasonable
I don't have to prove
doubt.
that there isn't a God.
Yeah.
Right.
You have to prove that there is a God.
Well,
in court.
The burden of proof falls on the religious person to say, the atheist would say, you prove to me that there is a God. And if you can't, then there is no God.
Right. That's like the bet from Pascal, the French scientist. No,
not to be confused with the Japanese scientist
exactly. From last week.
This is but hey man, I just had to drop French scientist now.
Every once in a while, you got to drop
and philosopher and mathematician, one of the brilliant minds of history. But the to me, people. What I find so fascinating is that people always believe if there's a miracle, right? They need to see a miracle. First of all, you can't believe everything you see. That's rule number one. Everyone knows that. Mm-hmm. But second of all, it's like what's crazy is that why do you need to see someone walk on water or turn water into wine, or just look at how every snowflake is different from one another. Uh-huh. That to me in itself is a goddamn miracle.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I know exactly what
there's miracles everywhere.
And also
everywhere that's like every part of us, of our being is a miracle.
I don't really believe in God, so to speak.
So
but I still feel like this is a miracle. Like I still feel like being here is a miracle. Being here is a gift.
So when
I get more,
what do you believe in?
I'm not sure. And I would like it to be more obvious if I'm going to like really commit to something. When I start, ironically, in today's society, the more I hear about science, that makes me believe in God more.
Yeah.
Because it just seems like so mathematical and so
the way things work out.
Yeah,
it's kind of like that shit.
Wow.
Yeah. Like how did that?
That's mind-blowing stuff. And I'm not saying I don't think that a human can really conceive of what's happening. And so it's not like one guy up in some space in a workshop.
Right.
It's something, it's just something much more grand that we can't wrap our head around, which is why it's hard to believe in something that someone came up with 2,000 years ago. You should be able to update religions and be like, all right, now here's what's happening. Yeah. We got a better grasp on it. Or whatever. I don't know if we have a better grasp on it. But no, it doesn't seem obvious to me, and it doesn't inspire belief to me so easily. Mm-hmm. But I've been brought up religious, so I can't help but think of I'll still like pray for things I want, or like I'll still talk to some God or something in certain moments, or I'll look at my fate and my chance encounters in my life and go, wow, that was really kind of meant to be. Of course, there's no alternate reality. So it's kind of just I met you in Montreal in 2007 and now we're doing this. That seems really like part of not some grand plan, but kind of a cool plan.
I mean, it's,
yeah,
it's weird. I got into podcasting, listening to podcasts 12 years ago, and just so happened to listen to one random podcast by an older comic who had these guests on. And then I really liked one of the guests, Tom. And then that led me to you. And now we're sitting here in New York. I'm a Florida kid.
Yeah.
You know, if you looked at my life on paper, you'd be like, that kid's going to die or he's a big fuck up. And now I'm in New York doing a podcast with two great comics. Like, I think what you said about being raised in the church, especially in Catholicism where it's very strict, I think that speaks a lot to, because I had the opposite upbringing. I was like, we went to church for like, there was a stretch where we went all the time and then we just kind of fell out of it. And it wasn't like a super strict church or anything like that. And then I actually found religion through getting sober and stuff on my own, which is, I think that's an interesting dynamic to look at it. And Daniel, you being the third, you can kind of be the tiebreaker. But I think coming up in a very strict, because a lot of the people I know who have fallen away or gotten away from religion itself came up in a very strict environment.
Yeah, that's the problem.
Yeah, and I came up in a very lax environment, but then had these miracles that we're talking about happen to me, as evidenced by me sitting here because I was supposed to be dead. And then it's very much like, or it's like, coming to it on my own, it's a lot easier to be like, yeah, I believe that.
I can see that because then you find religion the right way.
Yeah.
So when you're a kid, it's practically just discipline.
Yeah. It's
practically like boogeyman shit.
Yeah.
Like everyone's watching, and when you fuck up, you're going to be punished. Like
Someone's keeping track up in heaven.
It really messes with your brain to the point for me where I'm not sure, I haven't been diagnosed or anything, but I know I have like obsession problems. So we get like caught up in like, I'm going to go to hell. At like 10 years old, 11 years old, 12 years old.
Well,
it's hard to try to sleep at night with that shit. And I just got really upset with the whole system of adults telling kids this stuff. And then when you grow up and you find out these so-called Christians, they're not very focused on Christianity or doing the right thing. And the whole thing just seems like a big scam and a big lie.
It's a power
now,
play.
if I shift it over and I start reading about Buddhism, I don't really find Buddhism that different than Jesus Christ's life. And I relate to this Jesus Christ, by the way. That's one thing that's not lost on me.
I
relate to this guy. Like, I like this character.
Reloop it.
I like this character who, like, can't do the wrong thing. Always has to do the right thing. Because then he's like a North Star you can always look to. And that became a corny thing. What would Jesus do? But it's a good guideline.
Yeah.
You know, and it differs. You're not like looking it up in the Bible. You're just kind of going by your own conscience once you do that. What would Jesus do? Well, he wouldn't punch this guy in the face. You know, it's an easy answer.
Yeah.
So
it's also you can translate that with what would your higher self do?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. No, I agree. I think a lot of people also want to debate whether he existed or not, and I think it's completely irrelevant whether he existed or not. I think the message is, the most important thing. His teachings are just like, who cares if Buddha existed or not, but his teachings were dope. You know?
Right. And it's the tradition, and a society has established these, what would you call them? They're rules that will make life better for everyone.
Just like guidelines. Yeah. Mm-hmm. But it's like, this is something I say, I think I brought it up on the show before, but it's something I say to the people I sponsor in the super secret program I'm in. But it's, I don't care what you believe in. Just believe in something.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter what it is. Just something bigger than you. Because the problem that I ran into, and this is why it was easy for me to come back to religion or find religion in the first place, was I am a control freak. And everything has to be done my way. Matt knows this firsthand because we're sending emails back and forth, and I'm like, no, we have to do it like this, like that, like this. And that's just how I am with everything. And to be able to give up control, to be like, whatever's going to happen is going to happen.
Yeah.
And it doesn't matter if I do this or don't do this. Like, it's going to work out exactly how it's going to work out. And that has been so freeing. And it comes from this idea of being out of control, which, again, is ceding power to something else.
And we'll think about the other part of that, which isn't focused on enough when you're a kid learning about this stuff, is the idea that you're forgiven by someone who's perfect. It's really just enables you to forgive yourself, which is very difficult and really clogs us up when we can't forgive ourselves for things. But if you just say, and then it's kind of like being in the moment in Buddhism, it's like the past is the past, this is the moment right now. And I think that's very freeing. And I think to what you're saying, and I'd like you to help me articulate this, is like when you do look at things from a bigger picture, your problems seem a lot more silly. And you're less focused on yourself, and you're like, I'm part of this big community. And then when you realize tons of people are going through the same thing you're going through, or you're the yin and the yang of the world, you're part of the yin and maybe not the yang. Like it's relaxing. It's de-stressing.
Isn't that the greatest paradox of life, to think that we feel every day that we are the center of the universe. We feel because we live in our bodies and we have our lives and our worries and our minds, and yet simultaneously we are absolutely nothing. Yeah. And that's the great paradox of is it worth doing anything when we're nothing? But at the same time, we think everything is worth everything because we're in the middle of it all.
At the same time, what do you want to do today?
Yeah,
right. You got to do something.
Right.
We're all the hero in our own story.
That's the thing. And that's another thing we were brought up on, is we're brought up on televisions and movies. And I think it's different than books. Books can be more omniscient. Yeah. But like, there's always like this main character we're so used to narrative. And I don't know if that's of our generation or not, because clearly stories have gone on forever. But it's always like, it's us against the world. It's us against the institution. Us against nature. Yeah. It's always about like the conflict. Individual.
No one ever thinks that they're the side character who gets killed in the first act. Everyone thinks they're the hero.
Right.
Yeah. You know what I mean?
And then now that we all have our own television channels, our own Instagrams, our own Twitters, our own Facebooks, it gets nuts. It gets really nuts.
I had this conversation with my sister 2 days ago. Mm-hmm. My twin sister. I had sent her something. She's doing like a not drinking this month, so I'd send her like an inspirational quote every couple of days, just to be a good big brother. And I sent her something, and she was like, "Oh, thank you so much. This really helps." 2 days go by, then I'm on social media, and she has a post from a different account, basically saying the same exact thing I said.
Yeah.
Which is like no shade on her. Like she just found it and was like, "Oh, This is inspirational." So I click on this post. Like 180,000 followers. And I texted her. I was just like, I said the same thing the other day. I've got 1,500. Like, what the fuck is going on? Yeah. And she's like, yeah, but it's the fonts and it's pretty and like they know how to market it and stuff. Right. But it's like what you're saying is, I'm like, I'm doing the same thing that these people are doing, but they're obviously in this world the bigger character than I am, but I think I'm the main character because it's like I just said the same thing.
Right.
So it's just like a whole clusterfuck of like, who's right?
Yeah.
But not everyone is.
And the subject matter isn't about being right.
Yeah.
You still get involved.
Yeah. Still want to be like, no, I said that.
Yeah, but sometimes it's not about the message, it's about the messenger.
Yeah.
And because of your relationship, your close relationship with your sister, maybe she needs to hear it from another messenger.
Yeah, that's true.
It could be the same message, but she'll absorb it and dissect it and take it in differently than if she took it from her little brother or older brother.
Older by 30 minutes.
Older. There you go. Yeah. So that's the huge issue.
Hey, in the twin world, that's a long time. But it is interesting how... Like, we can say the same stuff.
But that happens to us, too. Yeah. You know, like, your girlfriend or your father could tell you something, then you'll be like, F off. And then a buddy could be like, or a homeless man that you just met 30 seconds ago will say the same words of wisdom, and you'll be like, wow, that was a message. It came from the gods. This homeless man said the truth. Yeah. If it's your dad, it's like, F him.
Yeah.
You know?
Oh, yeah.
What does he know?
Side note, I've seen my joke written in some kid's yearbook and then posted on like one of those accounts that's just a collection of things like on the internet.
Meme accounts.
And had like 1 million likes or whatever. And I'm like, that's my joke from my half-hour special. Yeah. Like he got it from me. And it's a weird joke too. There's no way it's not mine.
The Simpsons did that too,
catch more flies with honey, but you catch more honeys when you fly. Like, sure, anybody could have written that, but I know it was mine. It was came out after my half-hour special.
Yeah, that's a great joke.
Yeah, and it's just this kid. It's like this nerdy-looking kid. So it is kind of funnier because it's like a nerdy-looking kid said it.
Right.
You know.
Right.
But it is weird to see like there are those accounts that just grab other stuff that's already on the internet and then their accounts are huge.
Yeah, and then they
Which
either
is fine.
repurpose it or repackage it and put it out.
Which is fine unless you're like, but when you're taking from like an artist, that's kind of weird.
Right.
I had someone, and you guys are a better authority on this than anybody I know because you've both been in comedy for a long time. I had someone at a mic after I did a bit. I have a bit about movie lines. Very obvious premise. Anyone can do it. But then as soon as I did that bit, like the very next mic, because a lot of us go from mic to mic, this other comic did a bit where he's quoting movie lines. Almost in the same structure.
Yeah.
And I kind of lost it. Mm-hmm. But then I was like, well, it could be a pretty general premise. But I was like, it's pretty specific. Like, I'm obsessed with comedy, and I haven't seen anyone do this kind of a bit before. And now this guy, after seeing me do it at the mic before, is now like, oh, I think of movie lines too.
Yeah.
Am I right to be like, yo, what the fuck? Or should I just let it go?
It's two things. You can be like, what the fuck? But I think we overvalue how important our material is.
Yeah, yeah.
It's more about you when you get up there.
Yeah.
Like,
it comes down to the what would Buddha do? Let's just circle back.
And I don't know how to answer that. I had this dilemma with a joke where this first happened with, I had a closing bit about, it was like a Michael Jackson bit. And
did you dance?
And pedophiles. No. That'd be weird.
If you got to dance first before it gets ugly.
And it was a joke that I wrote easily 12 years ago now. No, maybe 10 years ago. And then a couple of years ago, I saw Chappelle on his special do that same bit, same premise.
Same premise, yeah.
Same premise. By no means I did he take anything from me, but I do believe in parallel thinking.
Yeah,
of course.
And it was frustrating to have to drop that joke because if I tell that joke today, everyone's going to think, he stole it from Chappelle.
Right.
A couple of years ago, Andrew Schultz had the same joke, the same premise. And I was like, and I saw him in a show, and I said, I had a very similar joke, and I had to drop it because Chappelle. And again, I'm not saying Andrew took that from me. Again, I think it's very possible and most probable parallel thinking. But he still kept it.
Yeah.
And still toured and would do that bit. And it made me wonder, like, do I need to care about what other people are going to say about me? Should I just stick to what I know and, deal with confrontation if it comes? And you know how it is here. Like, everyone's a police of...
Then you get on the internet,
and then you get on the internet, and then you're...
it's like Interpol.
And you're a thief, and... Yeah, exactly. It is. It really is.
All of a sudden, the FBI's after you.
Yeah.
And do I want to face that or not? But then so this experience happened, and then I wrote a joke, and I saw another comedian say pretty much again the same premise, and I said, Jesus, what do I do now? Do I stick to the joke, or because of social media, this is the conflict with social media. As a comic, what's so tricky is we don't want to know what's out there. We don't want to watch anything because if we do, we might get influenced, or we might limit our creativity because we can't talk about something because so and so talked about it. But at the same time, so we don't want to watch anything, but at the same time, we need to watch everything because we need to know what's out there. Because we want to sound original. I think that's what,
the only guy that sounds like me is that kid in the yearbook.
That's awesome. But in terms of content, not so much of style. You have such a I told you this since we met. You have one of the most distinct styles in comedy.
Thanks, man. But I get what you're saying, and I don't know what the right answer is because I just don't enjoy looking at stuff, and I don't think it helps me, so I don't.
Yeah, so it's like, what do you do? Do you stick with your guns or and just okay? Who cares? So it's out there. Someone has a similar premise. Do I stick with it?
I got the answer for that.
do I drop it? And again, it's still my joke. You
just got to think about where you're doing it. So like at the old folks' home, at the community, in a week, you do that joke.
Yeah.
Considering it's hopefully it's not too dirty. Consider hopefully it's PG-13. But
Alzheimer's.
But as far as like going up at Gotham and you're doing 15 minutes and there's other comics there, then fuck that joke, I think it's like you still get to do it.
Yeah,
but even though just the Chappelle thing, just the fact that
like Andrew was still doing his, like, he stuck to his guns. He was like, fuck it, I don't care. Even if Chappelle's special is out.
Yeah.
And at that point, Andrew was already blowing up. He still decided to stick with it, and
then you have your decision
right.
too. Like, how much do you like that joke? How much do you believe in that joke? Is it still yours? Is it still what you want to do?
How did it come to you is another big thing, because there are certain bits I have where I'm like, oh, this is me. Whether it's a story that happened to me that I turned into a bit or something, I'm like, this is 100% me.
Right.
You forget there's 8 billion people in the world. So people have parallel experiences, not just like parallel thinking. And I've had people go on stage and talk about being bipolar in certain situations that happened to them. And I was like, I thought I was the only comic in the world who also suffers from bipolar, who's also been arrested. Turns out I'm not.
Right.
And there's other comics who have bits about it.
Right.
And I'm like, but I'm not going to scrap those because those are my, you know what I mean? Because like those are.
Let me tell you, I don't have any original premises. I've got all original punchlines.
Yeah.
And if I hear someone do a punchline of mine, then I start to question it.
Yeah.
But my jokes they're not. Because because the audience is broad.
Yeah.
So I have broad premises.
And it's also so funny how in the community there are some thieves. That we know, but how quickly people are to jump on thievery when, man, parallel thinking happens all the time.
There's a lot.
It happens in art. It happens in music. It happens in comedy. It happens in films. How many times did we hear, like two of the same stories being produced at the same time, and then some producers back down because another like Scorsese is doing so and so is covering that topic, but they thought about it at the same time. It's time to come to fruition. And that it happens very often, and yet we're so quick to judge people and say you're a thief, you stole it. And I was like, man, maybe it's possible. Did you ever consider that you
ever watch an old movie you haven't seen before, but it's popular, and you go, holy shit. Like, first of all, I know like 8 of these jokes.
And I remember as a young comic, I still love Pablo Francisco, but he, when I started doing when I started doing comedy,
that's the shit.
He was amazing.
He's the ultimate stand-up comedian.
He's what a force.
Little tortilla boy.
And I watched some of his stuff like such a long time ago, and then when I started doing comedy, I only noticed that I had a very similar joke after I rewatched his stuff, and I was like, oh my God. Right. We don't realize how sometimes a thing we can hear in a movie, in a song, or a comedian say will just like seep down into our subconscious and then even push down to our unconscious.
And I think on a grander scheme of things, we are part of a group, right? So there is a collective sense of humor, and we do like to think of ourselves as the individual going, I come up with all the humor. Right. But no, as a society, we're coming up with, this is funny, and like individuals can tap into it for the group, but the group has to acknowledge it. So it is kind of what we were talking about before. And then like also you got to know that we're the only ones that give a fuck is the comics and the diehard comedy fans. Right, like, oh, gotcha. That's where the comedy police come in. And it seems like the comedy police is overwhelming. 98% of society does not give a fuck about overlapping jokes.
Right.
Let me tell you.
I've had people.
They got bills to pay.
I've had people tell me just repost it, and I go, well, yeah, but I have to scrub it from all my social media, then repost. They go, nobody fucking cares. Just repost it. Right. Who cares? Just put it back up. Those clips that you cut like 6 months ago, put them all back up. Nobody cares. Nobody's paying attention.
Right.
Pablo was one of the first. Pablo, Tom Rhodes, Mitch Hedberg were the 3 first Comedy Central Presents I recorded on
That's
VHS.
the era, dude. I love late 90s, early 2000s stand-up comedy. It was like the Wild West. Nobody was watching.
Yeah.
The cats were away and the mice were fucking playing.
German should have dropped
You know what I mean?
on you motherfuckers.
Comedy wasn't that popular, and it got really creative and really
It was so good. I mean, it's still awesome, but it was so... And I've talked about this on my show, but... to your point about the Pablo thing, I was doing a Dane Cook impression my first 5 years of stand-up because I had seen all this comedy and I was like, oh, I can't do that. Like what Mitch Hedberg did, I was like, this is awesome, but I can't do that. Like the way his brain worked, I was like, I can't do that. And then I saw Dane when he was like in his late 20s on his Comedy Central Presents, and I was like, oh, I can do that. Like rip my shirt off, pour the water. I was like, I can do that. And so my first 5 years of doing open mics, I was just trying to do that. And then it got to a point where it's like, oh, I'm not being original. As original as I think I'm being, I'm not at all because I'm just doing a ripoff of somebody else. And I know there's a lot of comics who start that way where they're doing either Chris Rock or Bill Burr or something like that. And it's like, oh, I have to get away from this. But it's to what you're saying where it's like, I go back and listen to the like Harmful of Swallowed now, and I'm like, oh, a bunch of my like beginning material was just rip-offs of Dane's material from 20 years ago.
Right.
It's insane. I did not wear the tank top.
Nice disguise.
Yeah.
You wore sleeves.
Hey, as much flack as he gets, that Harmful of Swallowed is a fantastic comedy album.
I don't know that I've listened to it, but I did see him around L.A. at that time, and he was a
2006.
He was a force.
Yeah,
he was a force from the early 2000s until that album came out, and I mean, actually, and afterwards too. But I mean, like. Everyone was.
It was a big thing.
Everyone wanted to see him.
This is when Burn CDs first came out, and this is when he was on MySpace, and he was to this day he still responds to everybody who messages him. So back in 2006, that was a big deal. And I know he's told the story about going to like ABC and like logging into their server and crashing their servers because people were messaging him. But that was the thing, was Burn CDs was huge. So it was the original viral. It was the first viral thing where we would all burn the CD and pass it around in high school.
Even before that, he was so popular in L.A. that I remember one time I was standing kind of next to him. There was a guy who booked a show right next to him, but he was friends with Dane. And I was like, hey, I want to be on the show, blah, blah, blah. And the guy's like, hold on a second, because this woman says, hey, Dane, Jay, Brittany wants to get a picture with you. And you look over and Britney Spears is getting a picture taken with Dane, and this is before he was famous, and that's how popular he was in L.A.
Yeah.
Like, Britney Spears wanted a picture with him.
But it's just nuts that was my intro into comedy, and then that's who I, like, model. Like you were saying with the Pablo, like, how we all have our people, why we get into it.
Yeah.
And it's weird because
it was also very refreshing what he was doing. Like, no one was... You know, also energy, like, you know, again, Pablo, great energy, incredible energy. Dane Cook,
so
also
much
incredible energy. And it's Joe Coy, you know, when, you know, these are energetic comedians. And
Pablo is one of those guys, though, where you're not going, oh, that's smart. You're just dying laughing.
Yeah.
I love that.
Because you laugh from the gut. It's
so real.
And my tortillas.
Yeah,
my favorite.
He's amazing.
Is that the Beatles? Is that Ringo?
The Mexican Beatles. But yeah.
I think it's actually Austrian.
It's what was I gonna
energy,
say?
High energy.
Yeah. Because when I was in Montreal, when I was in comedy in Montreal, I was so high energy because that's all I knew, you know. And it took me playing at the Strip late nights for 4 people, 2 people, 1 person at Dangerfields. I've done a couple of shows at Dangerfields for 1. They would not cancel the show. And I remember the first time I had to go up on stage.
It's been a rough one, I'll tell you.
Right.
I don't get no respect.
And I remember the first time I went up on stage at the Strip, it was like 1 o'clock in the morning, and all I knew was my high energy comedy. And then,
that's interesting.
And then I was jumping up on stage. I'm like, hey, and I was like, it's 1 o'clock in the morning. They're drunk, and they're 4 people, and that's when it hit me so hard, and I was like, I can't be yelling at them. I got to be talking to them.
Right.
And I sat down. I think that was the first time I ever sat down on stage, and I said, I kind of like took my breath and I was like, fuck. Like, I reevaluated what comedy was. And then for so many nights and so many weeks and months and a couple of years, I was playing for such little crowds, you know, so a lot of times under 10.
Yeah.
And small rooms, 12 people. And then you just end up talking to people.
That's the.
And I think that's why there's such a New York style.
Yeah.
Because you just end up talking to people.
That's the Comedy Store is a little taste of that in LA. So when I first started, I felt like I always had an audience doing bringer shows, doing the improv. There's always an audience there. And then when I got past the Comedy Store, now I'm going up in front of 3 people, 1 person, 10 people. And it was just weird to try to figure out. I still don't love doing that.
Right.
Or I don't even know what to say sometimes. But I will just, what I'll do is I'll do my material and then space out my jokes where like now I'm just gonna like talk. Then it gets a little boring. Then I tell another joke. You know, just looking for something real while you're up there. And I don't find it comfortable at all, but we all have to do it sometimes.
That's the transition I'm going through now in my career is the going from the high energy of like doing shows in the Southeast and touring around and stuff to now, excuse me, being like, oh, there's 5 people here. Like, let's tone it down. Because I did a show at the Comedy Shop like 6 months into living in New York, and I like jumped on stage, and I was like, what's up? And they barked in like a tourist family, so no one spoke English, and there was like 7, 8 people, and I was like, why are you screaming at them? Like, chill out. And then I just like was talking, and that's something I've gotten better at since moving to New York is you don't have to be like, all the time. Like, you can bring it down and just talk.
You better not be.
Yeah.
That's the Beatles.
That's the Beatles.
Yeah.
That's definitely on the walrus.
But yeah, it's...
Cuckoo Kachoo.
And I remember the first time I headlined back, I went back to Montreal, I had such a dilemma. Like, because they only know me as this energetic comedian.
Oh,
you
yeah.
know? And then I'm like, I'm not doing that anymore. And it was confusing to perform, and it was confusing for them to see, for the comics in the back of the room and the audiences who knew me. And it was like this growing transition, like growing pains.
Yeah.
You know?
Have you ever seen, it didn't get released until I think the late 90s, early 2000s. Richard Pryor tried to put on tape his new style.
Oh, no.
Of just talking. And he's talking about like when he lived in a whorehouse and he gave head to like some men, and like he's talking about doing cocaine, which was like really weird at the time. And people are just walking out.
Yeah.
And it never saw the light of day until they were just trying to get.
It's out now?
I think it is. I don't know what it's called.
It came out as a vinyl?
It came out as a video. I rented it from my video store in like the early 2000s. And it's not funny yet.
Yeah.
It's just...
And you don't know what it's called?
No, we could look it up on IMDb, but...
Well, that was the Lenny Bruce thing. Towards the end of his life, he wasn't doing comedy anymore. He was so obsessed with his cases that he was just reading from the trial documents.
Yeah, and so this is the transition from Bill Cosby influenced Richard Pryor to the Richard Pryor we know. And I just brought it up because of growing pains. The pains were there.
Right. And Carlin, too.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Went
that was
through
big,
that.
yeah.
Yeah, he had to take a big pay cut because like he was unbookable all of a sudden.
Yeah. I don't feel like we see that too much, but I do feel that everybody that goes through New York, it'll transform your comedy
for sure. Yeah.
It definitely
just like everything does. Like the road transforms it.
Right.
Like,
well, we see it all the time with speaking of the road, you get some of those road dogs that come to New York and like they'll get thrown on Frantic at the Stand or something. And you're like, what are you doing, man?
But you know
it's very like, but it's like, that works in those rooms and all over the country. And it fucking crushes in those rooms. Mm-hmm. But then they come to New York where people can be a little snobbish about their stand-up. Yeah. And they do it here. And we're all like, comics are in the back like, look at this guy. And it's like, yeah, that guy tours all over the country and destroys. Like, you couldn't follow that guy.
Right. And some road dogs kill in New York.
Of course.
Some road dogs.
It translates.
Yeah, because some of the...
it can translate.
It can, but also like... they bring something, and I'm not talking about like, I'm not talking about like hacky material or easy stuff, but in terms of like an energy, they bring something that is refreshing. And I feel like, most comics feel dead on stage, and that's almost like a style. And it's nice sometimes to see like a seasoned road dog to bring like a certain life,
do a performance,
and care, and it's quite wonderful.
Well, we got to go soon, but I just want to tell you guys, a yippie is a person belonging to or identified with a politically active group of hippies. So it's kind of like just like a hippie.
Yeah, okay.
But it's
Political
like
hippie.
but politically motivated hippie.
So like the people doing the marches and stuff during the Vietnam War.
Like
Hippies.
what's his name, Hoffman, up there cursing and yelling and stuff in Forrest Gump,
Oh, yeah.
Right. Right.
Like he's a yippie. He's got an agenda.
Oh, Forrest Gump.
Yeah, it always comes back to Forrest Gump.
but yippie stands for like young hippie, or what is it?
I don't know how it breaks down. I just have this definition right here. It is a noun.
A yippie.
Yeah. Oh, here's some example sentences. Oh, geez, these are long sentences. Yeah, no, these sentences are so long. The hippies and the yippies who wanted to levitate the massive 3-point. This is all nonsense. This is not going to help. This is not going to help. Thanks for listening to The Power of How. Do your own research on that word, and we'll talk to you next week. Oh, and October 6th, Philadelphia.
Jester Castle.
Oh.
But no, October 6th, and Patreon. Break off $1 or $5 or $10.
Yep.
Or 100.
Get the shows early.
100,000. Be a yuppie. Give us money. Thanks for listening to The Power of How. Music by Daniel Torado. Artwork by Nelson Diaz. Follow us on all the social medias at The Power of How Podcast. Rate, review, and subscribe, and check us out at patreon.com/The Power of How Podcast. Send us some positive vibes in the form of U.S. currency. See you next week, everybody.